Hello, welcome back to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, how to spend it. I am Andy.
Felix, that is me.
Felix Schultz.
Yes. I don't have a follow-up to that. Yes, that's my name. Andy, who is our guest, our charming, lovely, and multidisciplinarily talented guest this week?
The well-travelled Kim Frank, who is a writer, editor, explorer, pretty legit, pretty cool person to have on the show. I'm actually very keen to kind of have a chat to Kim. She's been doing
interesting
stuff
talk.
with elephants.
Fair disclosure, I don't know if there was a weird bit where you went offline for a while, like you lost internet connection or something.
My computer turned off.
There's a weird edit there, Andy. What we were talking about while you weren't there was Subaru's gay-friendly advertising campaigns in the 90s.
Well, Felix, I edited it up so smoothly that no one would have noticed, but now they will. So join our Discord and tell us if you can pick up the
Patreon subscriber exclusive. You could hear our chat about Subaru's ad campaigns of the 90s.
I love it, Felix. But before that, what have you been up to?
Surprisingly busy January. I think it's maybe for me like a psychological thing of like, oh, December, I've got so much to do. I'll just finish all that, get Christmas done. And then I just forget that I've got heaps of deadlines in Jan as well.
Yeah.
Like I am in a world of hurt, Andy. I've got so many things to be writing that I'm not writing.
Virtual assistant. You know what I saw on the January rush? I saw an Australian Open like Kia driving around my neighborhood, and I was like, why the frick is an Australian Open? What is this doing here? Is it someone forget to take the wrap off? And then it occurred to me, the Australian Open is, like 2 weeks away?
Exactly.
So they're gearing up. They're ready to go.
But do you know what I've been doing instead of writing numerous print and online articles for various employers?
Does it involve watching muscular men make the transition from pro wrestler to actor?
In part, yeah. I've been. So did we talk about Glass Onion in the last episode of the pod, or have we has this been an offline Felix and Andy conversation?
Yeah, testing my memory here. If we haven't, everyone should watch Glass Onion. I think
we can talk about it twice. It's an exceptional movie. I was even contemplating watching it again.
Yes,
which is unprecedented for 2 weeks out after the original,
especially a murder mystery.
I know who did it now. There's a few things that I've been enjoying about it, and because the algorithm knows who I am and what I do, it's been serving me a lot of content, specifically around Dave Bautista and Daniel Craig. And I have two observations.
Okay.
One, it is so good to see Daniel Craig's real personality and fascinating to see how different his press trips have been, or his press representation has been with James Bond. And
when he actually enjoys the character he's playing. Yeah.
Or just can say stuff or talk about things and won't have, repercussions or who knows, whatever. But my Lord, it's because I like Daniel Craig early on in the career, and I was, a big fan of him becoming Bond. And it's kind of like a black hole of, cookie cutter action hero for the last 15 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, he doesn't. Well, it's not a role where he really gets any dialogue other than frowning and being a bit grumpy.
James Bond.
We did talk about Glass Onion offline. I think we've recommended it, but I think I messaged you. I think I watched it first. And I said,
yes.
Watched it the day it popped up on Netflix, and I just said, I think this film is pretty much flawless. Yeah, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And there's lots of so basically, Rian Johnson's sequel to Knives Out, which is something I know we've raved about a lot, whenever it came out. It's really, really great. It's quite over the top. It's got Janelle Monáe, who is one of my favorite people in the world, and she's very fabulous. The other person who's in it that I really, really like is Dave Bautista.
Mm-hmm.
You know him from WWE. You know him from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know him from Army of the Dead.
Yes. Oh, that was a great film too.
Yeah, he's and there's a lot coming out now where people are going, hey, this muscly meathead of man is can actually kind of act.
Well, he's left the Marvel Universe. He's putting that behind him, and he's focusing on the serious stuff.
And we've talked a bit about wrestlers as entertainers and why they're so good at it. And I've drawn, me being me, I've drawn the illusion that I think they have that, the same sort of skill set of performance, fan service, and entertainment ability as drag queens. So they understand that they're not too big for what they're doing. And he really exemplifies that. I don't know. He's just really great, really, really interesting person that I think challenges you to look beyond that sort of, he's like a big dude, that's on the roids and, starring in action movies. That sort of perception.
And I think Daniel Craig rocks a vintage Omega in the flick. I think he's still donning the Omega train pretty hard.
Yeah, I've seen him wearing an Omega. I mean, why wouldn't you, honestly? I mean,
he's probably still under contract. Out of Bond, but still under contract.
I mean, there's that Belvedere vodka,
Well, that's, that was so bizarre seeing that, because that was sort of the first...
breakout of character.
The breakout of character. And what is this? What is this?
But I saw one, it's just hilarious. Like someone was asking him, like, he's just giving like old dad energy. It's like, someone asked him what the best concert he went to was. And without pausing for a second, he said, Asian Dub Foundation, Shepherd's Bush, 1996. Like, okay. Like he's not, equivocating at all. He's just going, this is it. I don't know. I'm really enjoying it. Andy, what have you been enjoying?
Also a film. I rented a film.
Hey, wow.
Yeah.
Went down to Blockbuster?
Walked down to the Apple iTunes store on my Apple TV. Film called Emily the Criminal with Aubrey Plaza as the lead. Everyone loves her.
Everyone's favourite White Lotus star.
All these favourite. Yeah, no spoilers. With Theo Rossi, who you might know from Sons of Anarchy.
Who is he in Sons of Anarchy? He's one of the young guys?
Yeah, one of the guys with the shaved head.
Oh, that narrows it down.
He had a really grim... Hispanic. Okay. And he had a really grim ending. It was really sad. He sort of like turned on the club and then had to pay for it later, and they found out. And
that old chestnut.
Yeah, it was actually a really heartbreaking ending for him. Okay. Bit of a low budget indie criminal thriller.
How does he fare in Emily the Criminal? Happy ending for him?
Look, so it's a low budget indie film. I think it was going for an award, like probably a couple $1 million.
Sure.
But it made Charith, who everyone might know from, I guess, Fifth Wrist, a bit of a watch guy here in Melbourne, big film guy. And I think it was in his like top 10 or top 15 movies of last year. So I thought, all right, I'm going to pick this out and watch it. Really good, really solid. I'm not going to spoil it to tell you how he fares, because it is it's a criminal thriller.
Sure.
But very enjoyable.
Okay, Emily the Criminal.
$6.99 on Apple TV. Get it. It's worth it. It's worth the $6.99 rental. Don't buy it. Just rent it.
I also watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. Have you seen that?
Yes, I watched that last week.
Oh, nice. I watched it in parts, and I probably wasn't. I was too tired to enjoy.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, I still liked it. I didn't realize that the husband of Michelle Yeoh was the short round from Indiana Jones. And yeah. So he was the air quotes Asian child actor in the 80s. He also was in, I think, The Goonies.
Fun fact, that film was apparently written with Jackie Chan in mind, but he didn't want to do it.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Well, that guy is a stunt coordinator. So.
But Jackie Chan was meant to be, I think, played by him.
Really? I mean, different energy. Jackie Chan's getting on a bit these days.
Anyway, he didn't want to do it, so I'm not sure how he feels about that after the success of the film, but it's neither here nor there.
I'm sure he's quite happy with his life choices, to be honest.
I'm sure he's very fine.
Speaking of choices, we've been talking about films. This is not a film podcast. We're not film pros talking about Letterboxd and Snyder cuts. We are a watch podcast talking about watch things. One of the stories I'm writing is a sort of your classic prediction piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of asking some people what they think about what we're going to see this year. And I thought I'd ask you in a more informal, podcast friendly way. What do you think we're going to be seeing this year? Who's going to be picking up heat? What's going to be trending? It's going to be purple dials all over the shop.
Yep, the dial color's one thing, but I think last year we saw a lot of three-way collaborations.
Okay, so you're talking your watch brand, your artist, and your
media. I'm thinking 4 to 5-way collaborations this year. As the market sort of softens, we're going to see brand, media, maybe an artist, definitely someone from the aftermarket or a modifier, and possibly a retailer, just all joining forces. It's going to be like the
minimizing
Avengers.
Risk everywhere.
Just the Avengers of collaboration. We're going to see I'm going to put it here now. We're going to see an absolutely ridiculous collaboration, and it's just going to be the parties involved.
All right. So what are we talking about? Let's. Are you comfortable sort of throwing some names out there? Because I will, if you don't want to.
I think, yep, you go.
We are going to see the New York Times luxury lifestyle supplement partnering with a high-end real estate developer, partnering with a TikTok influencer partnering with Salt Bay, partnering with a watch brand.
Salt Bay. No, he's been cancelled, Felix.
Oh, has he? Oh,
yeah. Keep up. Keep up. He's out.
Was it the World Cup that cancelled him or something else?
Yeah, the World Cup. He got this. I think the people cancelled him.
Well, a chef. Let me go a chef. So the TikTok influence is the marketing avenue. The real estate is the client base.
Mm-hmm.
The chef is, I don't know, they'll put a slice of salmon in it. Who knows what watch brand?
Probably Moser if it's going to have a slice of salmon. Yeah. Don't forget the charity element as well. There's got to be a charity element.
This one's got to be about putting salmon back in the wild, ironically.
Oh, goodness me. What about you? Any legitimate predictions for this year?
The one that I've been seeing pop up a little bit here and there, and I think Parmigiani.
Yeah,
they've sort of really been pulling over some of the people that used to be at Bulgari.
Have they?
Yeah, I saw it on LinkedIn. Pascal Brandt, who you may remember from Basel press conferences of years gone by, he's now there, and I think it's Guido Torini who's the CEO now. He's ex-Bulgari, so they're sort of, and it's there. All the bones and elements of success are there.
Yeah, and it's low production, so you know,
it's kind of cool. The Tondas. I mean, lots of people have been hyping up the Tonda.
Well, it just wouldn't take much by their numbers. It wouldn't take much for them to have a cracking year.
And they're cool. Like I've caught myself in weaker moments looking at them and going, man, that's kind of a cool watch. I could.
It's probably too late, to be honest. The ship's probably sailed on Parmigiani.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's sort of my self-awareness of when I notice things and think they're cool. They're already,
Yeah.
I think this, Roger Dupuis, early Roger Dupuis, that's got to be pretty cool.
Oh, you think early Roger?
I mean, it already is. I think we're laid out too.
That ship sailed as well.
Yeah. So, anything else that you think? Any surprise watch moments that you want to call? Like, are we gonna Moonswatch was the one that we couldn't predict next year or last year.
I think it's gonna be
a Moonswatch moment.
I think it's gonna be really interesting because obviously the pre-owned market softened, the new market softened. Retail, the brands themselves are getting a lot more aggressive and sort of stepping more and more into that retail space.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm curious because on all fronts, the economic outlook for this year is not meant to be great, and I'm really curious to see how that impacts what brands release. Will they go harder to kind of really release strong watches? Will they not care? Will they just ignore it? I am very interested to see.
Here's another very unsubstantiated prediction for you for a sort of a mainstream social media, mainstream watch media moment. I'm going to say that we're going to either have some sort of celebrity or sports hero or someone throw a watch at someone or like lose their temper with a watch, or someone's going to have a watch stolen and it's going to make, people have gone, oh, this person got their watch stolen. Turns out it was worth $18 million.
Oh, you think there'll be a big heist?
No, not that. I just think it's going to be like someone really famous is going to do something involving a watch that will get media attention. This is just Felix is maybe slightly dehydrated.
Yeah, I mean, the odds of someone famous doing something with a watch that gets a lot of publicity, high. But
it's also great, Andy, because if it doesn't happen, we're going to forget about it and we'll never talk about it again. But if it does happen, if Jason Sudeikis, throws a watch at a reporter, I can.
Oh, so you think it like organically? Someone will just.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like,
so you think watch is going to be weaponized? Do you think that there'll be some sort of assault?
Yeah, like like a couple of years ago, it was like, Russell Crowe threw his phone at someone, or all that sort of like. There's some sort of media beat up. It's got to be involving a Hublot or an Audemars or something.
Someone's just going to crack. They're just going to put the Rolex around their wrist and just.
I don't think it's going to be like assault.
Oh,
it's going to be not in the. Sorry, it is going to be assault, but not. It's not like going to be someone's trying to murder someone with a Rolex.
Okay, it's more like
I had this in my hand and I'm going to lose my temper.
Leonardo cracks under pressure and hurls his.
Or another one like a little while ago, like the F1 boss, like. Had his watches stolen, and that was a big sort of moment. That would have been like 10 years ago.
Probably going to be a tennis player. Take it off and throw it.
Curious. That's probably why it hasn't got a lot of deal.
There you go, Felix. I think we should probably get Kim Frank on.
Good idea, mate.
Felix, today's guest is an experienced explorer who was awarded a Rolex Explorer for her exploring. On top of that, she's an elephant essayist and editor. Kim Frank is a writer and editor crafting long-form stories with some of the world's top photographers, videographers, with the aim of kind of highlighting conservation, exploration, and of course, adventure all around the world. Welcome to OT the Podcast, Kim.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you both so much.
It's great to have you. Just going to catch my breath for a second because that was a mouthful.
There's actually a 50-cent royalty fee whenever we say the word explorer.
I
was getting paid per time, yeah.
I do have a bit of imposter complex, so I definitely won't be saying it myself.
All right. Well, to Icebreaker, I know I've got this is a bit of a long-winded diversion of the conversation, but obviously you are David Concannon, who we had on the podcast late last year, his partner. He mentioned to me that you have some sort of doodle dog. I'm a dog dad, so I want to hear what sort of doodle dog you have.
I have a golden doodle.
A
Wait,
groodle.
do you have more question to that, or is that the question?
Well, I do. So my partner really wants a groodle to accompany our Samoyed. So I've got a Samoyed, which is strange for Australia, very cute dog. Now, I know you've done some writing about the Nanette people, which are from Russia, and which is the birthplace of the Samoyed, the Samoyedic people. Were you on that trip, or did you just sort of write it up?
I was not on that trip, and it was interesting because I had kind of started my, I'd say, career, so to speak, in exploration storytelling by some of the people I had met at the Explorers Club. And Allegra Allie was one of those people, and she was embarking on this pretty intense several-month expedition to study a Nanette pregnancy, and she was doing she was doing documentary photography, and then anthropology, and English is her second language, and we partnered together so I would write the story, and we did a few projects together, and actually working with her kind of inspired me to want to start telling my own stories in my own voice after a while, seeing how I could get myself out in the world like that. Backing up, I have a golden doodle, and I love him. His name is Oscar. He drives David crazy, but I love him so much. He's so cute. So I would say go for it. And a Samoyed, those are gorgeous dogs.
Well, yeah, I mean, they seem like quite the duo, and it's a bit of an odd one to have in Australia given the climate. But I did read that article, and Felix will get you to link it up. But yeah, herding reindeer, and so I was like going through the article, looking for the photos, and there is a photo of a Samoyed on a very long leash herding some reindeer, which is what they were sort of originally bred for. So that was quite.
Oh, right, that's right, because if I recall that part of the story, it was pretty fascinating and pretty intense. That was, they were having a lot of issues with climate change, having warmed the basically the permafrost was melting, and we were having a lot of trouble getting to the migration grounds where they usually travel. And Allie was telling me about this one time when the mother, who is 9 months pregnant, about to have her baby at any moment, is kind of with a rope trying to corral the reindeer with the dogs. I feel like the dogs were did you say they were on the rope?
Yeah.
But it's been a few years since I've written the story, but I just remember the visual, and the mother fell at some point and fell in the snow, and she ended up being fine, but it was just a really tense moment for the family. And when you think about kind of how pregnant women are treated in various cultures, and I think
they're herding
that
reindeer
was just right out there.
Yeah, well, they're very strong. They're sled dogs as well as herding dogs. So they're quite an interesting breed. But I never you see old photos of them. 150-year-old photos of them, in their habitat, but you don't really see it
Yeah.
sort of in more modern times, which is quite cool. So there you go. That's the icebreaker, and the pun was intended. Speaking.
Oh yeah, great. That's great.
I just got that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm off to a strong start this morning.
Permafrosty response for me.
Speaking of climate change, let's talk about cars.
Oh.
You've got a.
Don't ask me about my car.
Well, you've got old cars.
We're talking about climate.
You've got old cars, so I think there's an argument to be made to preservation, which we've talked about, conservation, preservation. That also applies to watches and cars. Had a look on your Instagram. I saw that you're very proud of a Toyota FJ40 that you're sort of running about. What's the story there?
Let's see. Years and years and years ago, when I was young, actually, there's this is a longer story, but David and I first met I was in high school, he was in college, and we worked together for my parents as lifeguards at my family business at a pool.
Mm-hmm.
And he drove a Jeep. And I had a huge crush on him, and I really had a big crush on his Jeep. And so the FJ40, when I first saw it, they told me it had been completely, refurbished. It had all updated. It had this sick engine in it. And it was a soft top, and it was 4 on the floor. And I was mad in love, 1974, and I wanted it, and I was able to afford it, and I bought it, but I couldn't drive it because I had completely forgotten how to drive. I had completely forgotten how to drive stick shift, and I couldn't drive it off the lot. Dave actually had to drive it off the lot for me, and I was humiliated. But like most things, if I really love something and want something, it's kind of the best motivator for me to learn very, very quickly. So by the end of the week, I was out driving around town, and it's kind of like driving a tractor, and it's no easy vehicle to drive. And I had to replace many, many, many things over time. It was kind of like, I'll say, like a bad boyfriend you keep going back to. You think maybe this time it's going to be better, and then you fall back in love, and then like it's crap, and you have to fix it all over again. But unlike a bad boyfriend, he's stuck. So he's one of my favorite things. I feel oddly really proud when I'm driving that thing, because I know how hard it was for me to kind of like master all its quirkiness. So it's a reminder, that vehicle is like a reminder to me all the time of kind of persistence and prevailing.
That's cool. That's a really good a really good relationship, I think, to have with a car, beyond
Yeah.
something that takes you from A to B.
Yes.
So we've talked about dogs, we've talked about cars. We should probably talk about watches and exploration. In July last year, you received the Explorers Club Rolex Award. What is that? And congratulations. How did you
Thank you. So, backing up a bit, the Explorers Club has a flag and honors program, I guess, for lack of a better word, flag awards. They have about 220 flags since 1918 that have gone into the field with projects and expeditions that further science and exploration around the world. You have to apply for a flag, and there's a pretty intense vetting process to be able to take a flag into the field. Not a lot of women actually historically have carried flags. The flags themselves have been flown on both poles and have been to the highest mountains, the deepest sea, on the moon, and in deep space. In outer space, probably not in deep space. But I applied for the flag for this project, which has been part of an ongoing project that I am terming from conflict to coexistence regarding Asian elephants in North Bengal. And I was awarded the flag, and that means that I'm leading a team, which is the team that's both on the ground in India, already working diligently, not necessarily all connected, and also some of the people that I brought with me from here, from the U.S. And the Rolex. Okay, so that's the flag program. I was awarded flag 71, which is actually a very old flag from 1937. So that was really cool and terrifying because you have to take the flag physically into the field and then take pictures with it. And I was going to India during monsoon season. I hadn't been back for 2 years because of COVID. So it was a really intense trip and really humid. And the weather was, of course, abysmal, and this flag had to be kind of touted about. So that was a little nerve wracking. Rolex has a relationship with the Explorers Club, and they offer many different types of support and awards, one of which is called the Expedition Watch Program. And the Expedition Watch Program is a circulation of 3 watches. One is the Explorer. Oh boy, I'm not going to be able to remember each of the watches at the moment, but it's the Explorer 1, the Submariner, and then there's a third. And I they look at all all the people that have received a flag, and the committee makes a decision of who might be eligible for a particular Rolex. And then when you get the Rolex, it's on loan, so it's not. They don't give it to you. I was gifted temporarily the Rolex Explorer, the 39 millimeter Rolex Explorer, and then we take it into the field. And also because they've been pretty interested in conservation and supporting conservation, there was a dovetailing of the work that I was doing and some of the values that they've been supporting. However, am I talking too much, or are you good?
No, this is great.
No, it's fascinating.
Okay. So, I'm going to India during the monsoon, and I'm going to a very rural part of India, and I haven't been back for a while. I have a lot of relationships there. A lot of my relationships are people who are in the villages, living among elephants, on a regular basis and dealing with a pretty high level of deadly conflict, actually. And it's a very stressful environment. So I was very sensitive about wearing a Rolex and wanting to not have it be, this bling thing on my wrist. So I took it to my local jeweler. I actually researched bands for a really long time, and I chose a Perlon band because I felt that would be the lightest and best choice to go into the field and be in the monsoon and have it be durable without drawing too much attention to it.
Yep.
Because the 39 millimeter was quite sizable on my thin wrist. So I got talked into a rubber band, which those bands are lovely. The band that I got talked into, they put it on because they said, "Oh, this is going to be much better. This is the one you want." Well, it disintegrated while I was in the field.
Really?
The watch was amazing. I could see it at night. It was bomber, but the band itself, the rubber completely disintegrated. It came apart and it gave me a horrific rash all under my wrist, but I couldn't take it off because I couldn't go leave it in my room or leave it around. It wasn't my watch. I was a custodian of it. So I had these big welts under my wrist that I had to kind of tend to, and it was like 110 degrees and humid and pouring rain, and the watch was amazing. The band was not. So when I returned, so what Rolex does as part of the program is they'll engrave the names of the people who have been kind of have carried this watch into the field on a plaque at the Explorers Club, and then you submit a report. I submit a report that talks about the conservation happening there and the exploration happening there, and they Rolex then also helps you if you are interested in purchasing a watch, which is not so easy to do directly from Rolex. They kind of help pave the way for that if you've been a recipient. So my husband, being a collector and an explorer and a mentor and amazing human being, gifted me a 36 millimeter Explorer, which I took back to India this trip on a sailcloth band.
How did the sailcloth hold up?
Wait, hold on. Is it sailcloth? Oh, so Bulong & Sons has this really cool band.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's yeah. Been around a long time.
It's military style. It's a new band that they recently came out with. I'm not even sure if it's sailcloth. I have to look it up. I sent it in. It's in the picture. Right?
It's like a textile strap.
Yes, textile strap with the backing is not even leather, and it wears. It looks like a military canteen from the 1940s.
Okay, it could be like a ripstop.
And it's ripstop. Yeah,
ripstop? Oh, that's
I think
cool.
that's what it is. It's ripstop, and I love it. I love this band, and it has held up so well, and it looks really cool. And then it wears over time in a neat way.
Lovely little plug there for Bulong & Sons, makers of excellent watch straps. I've got a question. So Rolex are supporting the Explorers Club, and doing the research, I noted that you had done some work in the sort of this elephant project with a Rolex Award for Enterprise recipient Kriti Karanth, I believe. And Rolex sort of has this this mission in some ways as working for charitable ends. Yes. What does the support look like? Like, are they sort of throwing money at these projects, or is it more expertise?
So the Rolex has a plan called the Perpetual Planet, and they have grantees that they give funding to support conservation efforts. Now, my work, I'm not a grantee, nor have I ever applied. And the scientist that they support her work is mostly in the southern part of India. But she does do similar work in as far as she's created crop insurance, like crop banks, which is one of the identified solutions for farmers when they lose their crops due to elephants eating and destroying the crops. And she does a lot of other work around Asian elephants as well. And Rolex, they have a number of programs actually where they're supporting people and highlighting people with funds. Mostly that's the support that they give, and then they can also feature them, which helps raise their profile and potentially helps leverage more funds, which is always great for someone as we go out in the world trying to make a living out of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, it's you sort of I read about it, in press releases, but and every so often you have a short interview, but you don't really get a sense of what this sort of activity looks like, and it's right. That sounds quite concrete and actionable, I guess.
It's very fascinating to me because I think like many mainstream people who know of the name Rolex but don't actually take a deeper dive to the brand, Rolex has an immediate reaction of their a watch for rich people, or they're like a blinged out watch and they're like this great luxury. But what's fascinating to me about Rolex is their history of exploration and how deeply they've supported meaningful support of exploration throughout decades and decades of time. And then now they've really evolved into a strong advocate of conservation efforts across the world. So, as far as a model for, I mean, the old Rolex ads are absolutely, as a
Yeah, yeah.
writer, I'm captivated by the old Rolex ads because the stories are just really amazing and they give you such a bigger attachment to the watch.
Yeah, it's just sort of really interesting to kind of learn more because it's not something that they so heavily promote
No.
uh, outside of the club. But I know from previous chats with other kind of Explorers Club members that Rolex is sort of very, very supportive of those endeavors. And obviously, we know that they're sort of doing a lot of stuff in the arts, and conservation
Mhm.
is pretty important to them. Since you brought it up, though, this project that you were most recently sort of working on, it's a documentary, as I understand it. I've got quite a few questions because I had no idea that this sort of um, elephant war, I guess, happens every year.
Yeah,
Can you explain a little bit about sort of the
cer
project situation it's sort of capturing and actually what's going on?
certainly. Certainly, um,
Where to begin, right?
5 what's that? No, I was just thinking of how to arc this.
Yeah.
Okay, so, uh, I was on a hike here in my right in my neighborhood in Sun Valley, Idaho, with a good friend of mine who's also a National Geographic photographer, and she had just gotten back from India, and this was about 5, 6 years ago. 6
Mhm.
years ago, and she had met somebody there, a photographer there, who took her out and showed her these, right along the Nepal border, at the base of the Eastern Himalaya, within view of Kanchenjunga, there was this kind of mass movement of wild elephants who were, trying to get protection in the forest, but because there were so few forests left, they were hiding in different patches of forest and then walking across the village areas to get to the next patch of forest. And because that section of Nepal had recently, with the help of the World Bank,
Mhm.
put up a fence so that the elephants couldn't come through. Because in India, it's illegal; it's a crime to kill or harm an elephant. But in Nepal, the farmers were shooting and killing the elephants. So they put this fence up, and the elephants had never experienced it before. So they were pooling in this area, and people were coming out en masse and taking selfies, and like more and more people were coming every day to like yell and see the elephants. And so she was telling me about this, and at the time I had been doing a lot of work where I'm like writing in other people's exploration and stories, and there was something about the story that I just had to I was just so compelled by it, and I asked her if she'd be interested in going back and if we could partner to do a story together about it. And so, the next spring we went
Mhm.
back together, uh, and the elephants a lot happened, but a lot didn't happen. Basically, the elephants weren't actually there. It wasn't migration season. um, and I learned really quickly. We were able to go to a somehow in Darjeeling. There happened to be this meeting of all the players trying to mitigate the elephant conflict in this region, and we were allowed. Well, we camped out in the hotel on the floor and
Mhm.
begged until they said we could come in, and then I just sat there, mouth wide open, as I learned for 48 hours that I don't know the first thing to be able to write a story and just drop in and go home and write an article and think I know anything. So
Mm.
that was the beginning for me of a deep dive into learning what's happening there and hoping to be kind of a storytelling bridge to the Western world because it's such a significant global kind of harbinger of the future, and it's happening in India now. So that said, I'll back up.
Mm-hmm.
The area that I'm talking about is the area where I've put all my attention, where I've spent the most time. I've now, it's been a 6 year going back. I think I've been there 6 times now, for a little under a month each time.
Mm-hmm.
I've written a book. I'm working on a documentary. I've written 4 articles with local partners, raised money
Mm-hmm.
to help support nonprofits there. There's a little section that connects the rest of India to the northeastern states, and it's a tiny, slim little area. I actually sent in that link, there's a clip that shows it. It's right along the base of the Eastern Himalaya, and it's bordered by Bangladesh, Sikkim, which is now part of India, Nepal, and Bhutan. Uh, it's very slim, and it's
Mm-hmm.
known as the chicken neck of India. There's a quite large military presence there now because it's a pretty vulnerable place in terms of the connection to China and the kind of discord that is occurring between India and China. So there's a population explosion that's happening in that small space. Traditionally, it's been very forested, and elephants have migrated down through Bhutan, up down through Assam, across to Nepal, and it's estimated in India at one time there was about 100,000 Asian elephants. Now there's about 50,000 left.
Wow.
That's where, wait, 100,000, 50,000. That actually sounds high. I have to check
Like
that
too many. Yeah.
statistic. But they're definitely endangered, and their population is dropping far faster than African elephant population. Um, and in this region, there are about 10,000 elephants that move from the northeastern states
Mm-hmm.
in various areas. So what's been happening is that as the population grows, as the military presence gets larger, infrastructure like highways and railways are put in, and migrants are coming in, moving in along the border areas, which have traditionally been the roaming ground for elephants. So now elephants are having a lot more stress of trying to move
Mm.
freely from forest to forest to eat. Um, and there are 2 crop seasons a year. So there's June, July is, or May, June is maize season. So the elephants come into
Yep.
the crops to eat the maize. And then they also come into the homes to eat the food that's growing in the communities and also that's stored in the houses. Also, then there's paddy season in October, November, and the elephants come into the crops at that time as well. So about 400 to 500 people throughout India are killed each year from elephants.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and about 100 elephants per year are dying from predominantly human related types of, they get tangled in electrical
Mm.
wires that are down, hit by trains, hit by cars. Um,
Crazy.
so it's,
That
and
sort of
with,
environmental degradation stuff.
It's a sort of it's
right,
as you said, it's that really that conflict in many senses of the word, right? Like it's the actual physical conflict between farmers and elephants, but then it's the
correct,
sort of the moral conflict of you know growth, and it's a third world country where people are trying to survive.
right,
It's not like we have
right,
it in Australia and America, and they're literally sort of fighting for their life between a animal and
definitely.
human being. So that was really what struck me. And I remember talking to Felix about it when I first found out about this documentary and just being like, this is crazy. It's crazy that this sort of thing is happening in 2020, 2020,
Mm.
23. Now we've made it into the new year. It's just sort of wild.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a, I live in a community, oddly, that I mean, ironically, I travel so far to study this and to try and make a difference in this part of the world, when in my own community, we are, or in my state even, like, there's a human wildlife conflict to the point where people are just killing wolves and coyotes, like, with
Mm,
guns, like, you could
Mm.
never do that in India. Like, we all look at India like, oh, how could they do that to their elephants? But
Mm.
if we look at our own country here,
Yeah,
what we're doing
right.
to our wildlife is absolutely barbaric. And um, even in my own neighborhood, if a bear comes down from the woods, which is literally at my doorstep,
Mm.
of course a bear is going to come down from the woods and eat trash. The forest department comes in and shoots it.
Crazy.
And I think, we in our neighborhood have a pact that if it happens, no one says anything, and we just all keep our trash in from there on out. But um, there's a lot to be studied in this, what India's doing, what this part of the world's doing to fix the conflict. There are a lot of solutions that are being employed that are
Mm.
successful, but there's not a lot of funding, and so it's difficult to see. Um, like, it's difficult to see. Like, for example, I have forest department permission to film,
Mhm.
and I've spent a lot of time in the national parks while they're closed, with the teams of moats and forest department officials, like rangers, and the working elephants there. And the elephants that are working for conservation are elephants that have been brought in because they've been abandoned from the herd,
Yep.
and then they are put to work because they don't kill elephants. So they're
Right,
put
and
to
there are
work
some
in
parts you can only travel on elephant, right? That's the other thing I learned through this. Like, you
egg.
actually have to travel via elephant.
Sorry, say that again. The first part.
There's some parts in India that you actually have to
Yes.
travel via elephant back, like, you have to ride an elephant.
Yes.
There's no other sort of
Well,
logical way to get there.
that it's true then, and for thousands and thousands of years, the relationship between Asian elephants and humans have been a deeply synergistic working relationship.
mm,
Now, I'm not saying, I mean, it's the same as like camels and horses and
Mm.
um, the relationships that people have. Now, there's a lot about this could be a whole other thing. I'm not going to get too into it because it's so controversial,
Mm.
but there's,
Mm.
you know, the training methods are abhorrent historically, but now they've done all
Mhm.
this new research of how, just like in, for example, the US, like horse breaking used to be a thing and now it's not. Like, now there's positive reinforcement. And so there is all this research that supports when elephants are taken in and trained, that now there are new ways to do it. But because of the hue and cry internationally of, elephants should be in sanctuaries and not working, the elephants that I've seen that are working are literally saving their own species. They are patrolling the national forests in really thick,
Mm.
dense growth safely for poachers, to protect the endangered one-horn rhinos that are kept there. Also, they help scientists go in and tag wild elephants. So the only way, that some elephants are trained to actually, they're called kunki elephants, to work with humans to help corral and safely move out wild elephants when they're in danger of hurting people or themselves. So there's a relationship there that, in the West, we don't understand, and we can't understand until we deeply really look at that. And
Mm.
I think we tend to judge it really harshly without without really knowing the cultural context of what we're talking about. It's
Yeah, it's
complicated.
fascinating. And so I look at your Instagram, you've taken a lot of photos of elephants, you've documented them. You've sort of been 6 years into this particular project. I don't know if you saw this, but Brooklyn Beckham recently did a photography book, and in there famously there's a picture of an elephant, and he said they're hard to photograph. Is that true?
Um, it, does it depends. If they're captive elephants, then no. If they're wild elephants, they're extremely dangerous to photograph. And one of the major problems that's been happening in this region of India and all over India, but that I've been studying in particular, are people, trying to get closer and closer and closer for the selfie, for the great photo of the elephant. I work with some really talented elephant wildlife photographers who spend, they're not just photographers, they also work in the field connected to helping the human elephant conflict and conservation. So they're in the field all the time. And they, like Avijan Saha is one of my closest contacts and friends and colleagues there.
Yeah.
He's well known in the region for, he is every day, I mean, every single day, as late as possible, early in the morning. He sleeps in the villages. And so if you're somebody from another country who thinks they're going to fly in and get some elephant shots, it's probably not going to happen. Unless like you have a really good team of local people. And it's another reason why I feel really committed to celebrating the local talent of people who are just doing that hard work every day, trying to make a difference, who just need to be heard.
Well, I hate to say it, Felix, but there might be some truth to Brooklyn Beckham's statement then.
Sure. So it was this. Was your work with the elephants that was what saw you take the Explorers Club flag recently? Is that correct?
Yes.
My question to you is, how did you get into the Explorers Club? It doesn't seem like something you do on a whim, really.
Well, I first really even knew about the Explorers Club through my partnership with David. And he was, at that time, deeply involved in the leadership at the club. He was, for a while, the head of Flag and Honors. He hasn't been for a few years. But I would go to events with him and meet these, members who were doing pretty fascinating conservation and exploration. And as a writer, which I was at the time, I was deeply interested and almost frustrated in a way, because so many of their stories were, being told in scientific journals, but they weren't getting out to a broader public. And I felt this kind of calling that I wanted to help in any way I could bring these stories to light, and act almost as a translator to write about, I'm a fiction writer. From my training is in fiction, like my craft is fiction. But obviously my career has been non-fiction. You don't really get paid for fiction. You barely get paid for nonfiction, but so I've done, I've done it all. And I've also been an editor of a magazine. And so at the time I had done some expeditions, like with my family, but I never actually saw myself as, an explorer or anything like that. But as a storyteller, I became more and more interested in the way that, because part of exploration, like they say, an adventurer is someone who like does this feat and goes and does this feat and says, look, I did this feat. Whereas an explorer is someone who has this experience and comes back and tells people about it and teaches people about it and uses what they've learned to help illuminate change, or help illuminate science or conservation. And so I became really interested in that aspect of exploration. And then had an opportunity to go on a flag expedition to the Britannic and also to the Titanic and write about that. Plus, I also started working with other members, photographers who I wrote the stories of their exploration. And so then that's how. So finally, actually, Don Walsh, Captain Don Walsh, who is my husband's mentor and who I've become friends with, one day after reading one of my stories said, "When are you going to sponsor her for the Explorers Club? Because she's ready and I would like to co-sponsor her." So that was a huge honor.
And to celebrate the huge honor, I believe there was another Rolex Explorer, the first Rolex Explorer that you've been wearing for a little while now, gold.
This is a very special watch to me. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, and Dave has in his collection this very elegant, very old, it's a 1958 Explorer. It's gold cap. It's a 369 dial. I believe it's 36 millimeters. It's on a crocodile band, old crocodile band. I love it. It has a cobalt blue secondhand cobalt blue secondhand that is just in the light. It just lights up, and I would wear it a lot, and I admired it a lot. And my fourth trip to North Bengal was actually the first time I saw the wild elephants in full form. It was harrowing. I went out with a small team, 2 community members and Abijan, the photographer, and they took me out for 24 hours, literally out in the heat of the conflict with farmers shooting pipe guns, and I saw the elephants, small herds, a tusker in musk. Actually, if you're familiar with musk, when a tusker is in musk, it's 60 times the normal testosterone. Whoa. And they're extremely violent. Like they can kill other elephants. They kill their mahouts. They kill anything in its path. They're like these wild, sexually charged, oozing. You can smell them. When we were riding the motorcycle at night in this little tiny trail, suddenly Abijan said, "Can you smell that?" And it was like earth and urine, and like I can't even describe. The smell was permeated the air. And there was a tusker named Llama, and he was eating I have a photo, actually. Abijan took a photo of him eating the crops, and you can see the musk draining from his eye. Well, everyone wanted to see the tusker. Abijan was dying to get a good shot of him, and all the farmers, of course, everyone wanted to see him. He got pushed off into the forest, and they thought he was going to come around this bend in the road where the elephants typically cross, because the headlights of cars can see them quickly enough, so they have time before a car would hit them. So they always cross at this one section. They're so smart. I had decided I was going to stand back. I was over it by then. I have children. I'm like, this is really fucking dangerous. Like, it is the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life. I can't even believe I'm standing out here, and I still have hours to go before I can go home. And home is like a tiny, like someone's house where I'm sleeping on the floor that has already been demolished by an elephant once before. So I'm like, there's no safety. And I had to see it for myself so I could tell the story. Well, I'm standing now on the street, and Abijan says, "Okay, if anything comes around, jump in this crack between these 2 houses." Like, it's this tiny little crack. And I'm standing there, and I actually texted Dave, and I said, "I'm fucking done with this. This is a mistake. I am really this." And he said, "Well, this is what you came for, and you're earning your stripes. Now you've seen it, and now you know how to tell the story correctly. You know, other husbands probably would have been like, get out of there. You know, I love him for just being like, you can do this. So while I'm texting those words, I look up and I see Avajan and this whole group of people with a flashlight, like running back. And I said, oh, I gotta go. You know, they're coming. Well, Lama, the tusker in Musk, who he apparently, while I was talking to Dave, texting him, walked right past me, right behind me, like inches. I did not hear him because they're silent. Inches behind me, spared my life. I mean, I still am breathless even thinking about how close he was and how many people die that very way and how provoked this elephant was and how he was in Musk and how he spared me. And I went on to, you know, do many other things and experience many other things that trip. And when I came home that night, the night I arrived home, there was a little pile of gifts on the counter from Dave. One was the snow leopard, Peter Mathiassen's snow leopard, as a kind of inspiration for the book that I would then write. I forget what the other one was. And the third was a little brown, was wrapped in a brown piece of paper bag, and it had handwritten on it, for Kimberly, my intrepid explorer. And it was that 1958 watch, which
Oh, wow.
is this, yeah. So, yeah.
So, I mean, that's sounds like, you know, a particularly vivid moment in this broader conflict, you know, a very personal moment for you. And we've sort of talked about it every so often about, you know, the documentary nature of it. What's the status of that, and where can, you know, sort of people find it, or, you know, what's happening there?
So, two things. One, during COVID, I wrote a book, and the book's complete, and it's called The Elephant in the Hourglass, a journey of reckoning and hope along the Himalaya. And that book now has an agent, which is great. And we're currently just starting to seek publication. So going through that process of querying, and that's fun. So while that was happening, I felt like I need to do more, and I can't just sit around and wait. So how about if I try and make a documentary? Because so I've been back twice now filming, and the documentary is called Where the Forest Roars. And at the moment, I'm in production. So I came back in November, and now I'm writing the script and working with a local filmmaker who I love, Saurav Mandal, and he's amazing. And yeah, so we're going one step at a time.
Nice. Well,
nice.
Yeah, stay tuned.
I love it. So one thing I love, chatting to you, Kim, is how we ask you a simple question, or what I think is a simple question, and it ends up being a really wild and interesting story. And that's especially true with these watches, which, you know, and as part of it is that you actually wear them out. Part of them is that they mark pretty special occasions. You know, not everyone has been awarded an Explorers Club Rolex Explorer, but I do understand that you also are pretty fond of a vintage Rolex 1680. Obviously, you're into the vintage goodies. But tell us about your vintage
Yes.
sub, because I think that's probably been with you the longest.
It has. I believe it's a 1979. It's a funny thing. I wear it all the time. It was, well, before the Explorer. The sub was. David gifted it to me the first Christmas that we were in the same home together. You know, we were so. It has a naval history to it, I believe. I'm not that familiar with the whole history of that particular watch. I do know that I have a special affection for it because it's so girthy and big, and I've always loved wearing men's watches my whole life. And so um, I I've always, I don't know, it's I I feel like I could barely talk about it now though, because I kind of feel a little I feel a little guilty because I haven't worn it since I got the
Yeah.
Explorer. And but yeah, it's a
Do you
beautiful
prefer the
watch
size of
and
the
it
Explorer, do you think?
well, I've worn the Explorer so much now that when I put the sub on, I was like, "Whoa, shit, this is big!" Like, which is funny because I always wore the sub, and that was like my hallmark
Yeah.
that watch. But also, I will say this: oh, I feel like I'm betraying that sub because it's so beautiful and I love it. But the bubble date, I just don't. I there's something about that bubble date that I don't love. But the sub itself is
You don't love the
really
Cyclops? That's
yeah,
fair.
but then
That's
I
fair. It is
yeah.
pretty polarizing. Some people don't.
But, yeah, it's a sweet watch. Now I feel I'm also I put a band on it that David had to trim, like, cut it. I bought the wrong size with it's like
Yeah.
this beautiful suede, another Boulogne& and Son band, like, watch band, and it's suede gray, and it's super cool. It has red stitching, and, when David put it on, but I had bought it a little bit too big, and so he notched out the he cut a notch in it,
Nice.
and now I'm
Nice.
like, I can't wear it. I can't wear it until I fix it.
Well, I think you can. I think this is your, after you get off this call, find the sub,
Yeah,
put the Explorer in the safe, give the sub a little bit of love. It's,
I think that's a good
um,
idea. I think it's a
it's
good
been on a
idea.
little
I'm going
holiday.
to
Now
do
it's
that.
time to
Yeah, it's a good call.
It's been really, really lovely talking to you, Kim, and finding out about this sort of ongoing conflict with humans and elephants in the Indian region. Before we go, though, we always ask our guests for a recommendation of something that they've been enjoying in their life that isn't related to their work, or is it something purely for pleasure?
Mm.
So, is there something you've been watching or reading or listening to that you would recommend?
Yes, but when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind is that a friend of mine gave me these champagne truffle chocolates
Love
from
it.
is it Fortin and Mason? Is that
Yep.
how
Yeah, in
you
the
pronounce?
UK, yeah.
So British friends, actually my mentor is a filmmaker and they were here for 2 weeks over Christmas and gave me this like little box of truffle chocolates. I have freaking oh, I'm devouring them every day. They have to go. So that is the indulgent luxury champagne truffles. But I actually just finished a book that I haven't. Uh, this is shameful. I haven't actually had I haven't actually made the time to sit down and really read for enjoyment.
Mm.
And I read the book The Elephant Company, which has been out for quite some time, and it's a riveting story of Burma in World War II and a forest department guy from the UK who basically took elephants across this harrowing place and into took evacuees into India, and the elephants made bridges for. I mean, it was just this. I guess I'm saying I read it for pleasure. I did read it for pleasure, even though it dovetails with my work. But I could have put it down. And I read it for 2 days straight, and I would highly recommend it. And the author's name is
We'll find it. That's fine. We'll Google it. We'll put it up in the show notes.
Elephant
okay,
content.
The Elephant Company.
The
The
elephant
Elephant
company.
Company.
We'll
He
Google it. We'll
is
find
called.
it. Kim, thank you so much for joining Felix and I. It's been a insightful, educational, and very fun conversation.
Thank you both so much. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to go get that sub now.
Do it.
Right. I love it. All right. We'll chat to you soon.
Take care. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Kim Frank, what a charming person. What a lovely guest to speak to. We learn about cars, we learn about watches, and we learn a little bit. I'm fascinated by the inner workings of, Rolex charitable operations, because they never tell you otherwise.
Yeah, fascinating. Very, very just interesting person to talk to. A slightly different walk of life to the steps that you and I take, Felix. So forever grateful.
Involved in hers.
A few more elephants than the usual. Anyway, if you want to support OT, email us, otthepodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you're following us on social media, joining our Discord. Reviews, Felix?
You know what? If you email us, that'll be really nice because we get a lot of cold calling SEO emails. So just a genuine email.
Break the chain.
Yeah, break the chain. OT.podcast Instagram, and of course Signal Boost, I think it is. I think let's get on Twitter today. Just tag Elon Musk and OT.podcast.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.